Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, thank you all for being here today. So today we have His Grace Sri SRIVAS VANACARI. So thank you. Prabhuji, you may take
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskritya Narachaiva Narottamam. Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat. Nasta Prayasva Badresu Nityam Bhagavatam Sevaya. Bhagavati Uttamasloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki. So we are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 13, entitled Dhritarashtra Quits Home. And we are treating text 9. Kaya vritya vartitam vas charat bhishiti mandalam kirtani shetra mukyani sevitaniha bhutale. Kaya vritya vartitam vas charat bhishiti mandalam kirtani shetra mukyani sevitaniha bhutale. Kaya vritya vartitam vas charabhir shiti mandalam tirtani shitra mukyani sevitani hambutale. Word for word translation. Kaya, by which, vritya means, varititam, maintained, your livelihood, vaha, your good self, charadbir, while traveling, shiti mandalam, on the surface of the earth, tirtani, places of pilgrimage, shetra mukyani, the principal holy places, sevitani, served by you, iha, in this world, bhutale, on this planet. Translation. While traveling on the surface of the earth, how did you maintain your livelihood? At which holy places and pilgrimage sites did you render service? Srila Prabhupada's purport. Vidura went out from the palace to detach himself from household affairs, especially political intrigues, as referred to herein before. He was practically insulted by Duryodhana's calling him a son of a Sudrani, although it was not out of place to talk loosely in the case of one's grandmother. Vidura's mother, although a Sudrani, was the grandmother of Duryodhana, and funny talks are sometimes allowed between grandmother and grandchildren. But because the remark was an actual fact, it was unpalatable to Vidura, and it was accepted as a direct insult. He therefore decided to quit his paternal house and prepare for the renounced order of life. This preparatory stage is called Vanaprastha Ashram, or retired life, for traveling and visiting holy places on the surface of the earth. In the holy places of India, like Vrindavan, Haridwar, Jagannath Puri, and Prayag, there are many great devotees, and there are still free kitchen houses for persons who desire to advance spiritually. Maharaj Yudhishthira was inquisitive to learn whether Vidura maintained himself by the mercy of the free kitchen houses, chatras. Omagyana timridasya gyanan gyanashala kaya chakshuramli tamyena tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yukta Padakamalam Sri Gurum Vaishnavam Scha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunastam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Visakam Vitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishnaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Tirtha Swaminiti Namini Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Asritatmane Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Bhakti Tirtha Namini Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishnaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namini Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvese Sasunyavadi Pasachade Satarini Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Ivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namini Gaurati Ze Namaha Nityanando Vatutendur Vasuda Pranavalabha Janavir Jivita Patir Krishna Prema Pradaprabhu Padmavati Sutta Sribam Sachirananda Purvajaha Bhavom Mata Jagat Rakta Rakta Gora Kele Varaha Advaitam Harinadvaita Racharyam Bhakti Shamshanat Bhaktasham Arvaita Acharya Ashraye Panchatattvamakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Sarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakti Shaktikam Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha Nama Pankaja Nabaya Nama Pankaja Maline Nama Pankaja Nitraya Namaste Pankaja Graye Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmana Hitaya Cha Jagadhitaya Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Namaha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopita Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Jayatam Surato Pango Mama Mandir Gatima Sarvaswa Padam Bhujo Radha Mandana Mohano Divya Vrindaranya Kalpa Drumada Srimad Radha Gara Simhastanastau Sri Sri Radha Sri La Govinda Devo Prisyali Visavya Manosmarami Shrimam Rasaram Bivam Sivata Tatastita Karusan Venu Swanai Gopi Gopinata Sri Estunaha Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Brindavanishwari Vrishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Devi Krishnamai Proktarati Kapara Devata Sarvalashmi Mai Sarvam Kanti Samohini Paraha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Translation again. While traveling on the surface of the earth, how did you maintain your livelihood? At which holy places and pilgrimage sites did you render service? Ukam karoti vachalam pangum lagayete grim yat kare patamahan vande Shri Guru Dina Taranam Paramanam Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram Akanda Mandala Karam Vyaptayina Chara Charam Tatpadam Dashitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share with you a few points on this verse. And before we proceed to discuss this verse, before we proceed to represent Srila Vyasadeva, we seek the blessings of all the assembly of Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis so that we can say something which is beneficial for our own spiritual progress and probably for the benefit of the audience. Srila Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami makes a very significant statement in the Chaitanya Charitamrita in the regard of seeking the blessings of Vaishnavas. Drugame patime indasya skala pada gate muhur. Skala pada gate muhur. Yasti swa kripa yasti danena swa Santa Santu Avalambalam. So Krishna Das Kaviraj is praying for the mercy of the devotees. Swa Kripa, your mercy. Your mercy. So we need the mercy of the Vaishnavas to chant Hare Krishna, to study the scriptures, and to recite the scriptures. Santu Santa Avalambalam. Sri Krishna Das Kaviraj is seeking the blessings of the Vaishnavas in the form of their stick of support in order to execute the business of compiling the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we are seeking the blessings of all the Vaishnavas, especially if there are any Maharajas on the platform. We seek their blessings so that we can say something. So in this verse, Yudhishthira Maharaj is asking Vidura, while traveling on the surface of the earth, how do you maintain your livelihood? At which holy places and pilgrimage sites do you render service? So this chapter is entitled Dhritarashtra Quits Home. And the chapter begins with the description of Vidura quitting home. So that is interesting. How do we link Vidura's quitting home with that of Dhritarashtra quitting home? The interesting thing is that Vidura left home because he was practically thrown out. He was practically insulted by Duryodhana. And so he left home. And he taught many holy places. But then how does that link up with Dhritarashtra leaving home? So after Vidura had visited all these holy places and had become well established in his Krishna consciousness, he came back home. And at that time, the war was over. The Battle of Kurukshetra was over, and all the sons of Dhritarashtra were killed. And Dhritarashtra and Gandhari, they were living at the mercy of Yudhishthira Maharaj, the Pandavas. And Dhritarashtra was still thinking he's the king. He was still living in the royal home, the palace, enjoying the position of a father to the Pandavas. He was not thinking of retiring even in his old age. He was not thinking of retiring even though he had lost all his children. 100 children were all killed in the war. Dhritarashtra wasn't thinking of these things. He was thinking, so long as the Pandavas, they are taking good care of us, they are providing our needs, and they are honoring us as their fathers, as their guidance, there was no need to leave home. So after Vidura had visited so many holy places, he came back home all of a sudden. And he came home simply because he wanted to cause the renunciation of Dhritarashtra and his wife, Gandhari. So that is why the chapter actually begins with the leaving home or the renunciation of Vidura, because Vidura was responsible for inspiring Dhritarashtra to quit home. So he has returned from his tour of many holy places. He has returned from so many pilgrimage sites. And now his nephew, Yudhishthira Maharaj, is asking him questions about his tour of the holy places. How did you maintain yourself? Which of the holy places did you go? And where do you render your services? So Srila Prabhupada, in the opening sentence to his purport, he highlights the element of detachment. He said Vidura went out from the palace to detach himself from household affairs, especially political intrigues. So Vidura left home in order to detach himself from palace life. Palace life is a comfortable life where everything you need is provided. But Vidura, he left the comfort of palace life and he went traveling from holy place to holy place. So Srila Prabhupada explains how the energy of the Lord, the spiritual energy of the Lord, works internally and externally. The spiritual energy of the Lord helps the devotee to become detached from the world. And so in this case of Vidura, the spiritual energy of the Lord acted internally and externally. In other words, externally, he allowed Duryodhana to become antagonistic to Vidura by insulting him, by chastising him. That is the external aspect. But internally, Vidura understood that this is Krishna's mercy, that the antagonism from Duryodhana is simply an indication that I should leave home and lead a life of a vanaprastha. So Vidura, he took lesson from the activities of Duryodhana, antagonistic activities of Duryodhana, and therefore he left home in order to associate with great devotees in various holy sites, various places of pilgrimage, and also to render some service or services in the various places he would visit. So by enacting on traveling to holy places, meeting with great devotees in the holy places, hearing about the Lord, and seeing the different deities in the holy places, Vidura will become very advanced. He will become very detached. He will become very knowledgeable. And this would help him in his own spiritual life. And then when he had stabilized himself in Krishna consciousness, then he would come back home and deliver his brother, his senior brother, Dhritarashtra. So Vidura left home because Duryodhana had insulted him. Duryodhana had spoken very harshly to him. Duryodhana had disrespected him. In fact, Duryodhana instructed that they should actually cane Vidura and then throw him out of the palace. they should only live his life with him. He should be punished severely and thrown out of the palace. So when Vidura heard this from Duryodhana's mouth, he simply placed his bow and arrow at the entrance of the palace and he left. For a Kshatriya, his weapons are very important for him. Just like for a Brahmana, knowledge of the scriptures are very important for him. And for a Vaishya, business ventures are very important for him. And for a Sudra, service to others are very important for him. So it is said that when a Kshatriya leaves his bow and arrows, he abandons his bow and arrows, he renounces his bow and arrows, it means he has come to the platform whereby he wants to turn his back to the world. Just as we see in the case of Arjuna. Arjuna was ready to give up his bow and arrows and go to the forest and live like a sannyasi. Actually, he told Lord Krishna, better for us to become beggars and live in the forest than to kill our brothers, to kill our relatives because of material prosperity. But Krishna did not accept that because Krishna wanted a war of Kurukshetra to take place because he had gathered all the demonic kings together in one place and wanted to relieve the burden of the earth. So he wanted Arjuna to be an instrument. Therefore, he spoke to Arjuna not to abandon his Gandiva bow and arrows and go to the forest. But it is in the situation that Vidura is facing here, he abandoned his bow and arrows just at the entrance of the palace and left for the holy places. So it is said that political intrigues and maneuverings for sense gratification produces material attachment. And this attachment gives rise to pain. In other words, the living entity goes through a lot of pain when he becomes attached to any situation in the material world. Any attachment to anything in the material world will create some pain because our relationship with material things do not last. Any material situation we find ourselves in, it will not last. And so it creates lamentation. It creates pain. So therefore, political intrigues and maneuverings creates attachment to property, to state, to position. And therefore, Vidura thought it wise that let me leave this environment of political intrigues. Let me leave this environment of political maneuverings and let me just free myself of these attachments. And then let me associate with great devotees at the holy places. Let me take darshan of these holy places. Let me become purified of all this material contamination. And let me become eligible to serve the Lord. So on that note, Vidura, he left the palace. In the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd chapter, verse 12, it is mentioned that Shradadana Manayo Jnana Vara Jnana Yuktaya. That a seriously inquisitive student, well equipped with knowledge and detachment, realizes the absolute truth by rendering devotional service in terms of what he has heard from the Vedanta Sutras. So Vidura, he understood that if I remain in this palace, I will only be more and more entangled, more and more implicated in these political intrigues of the palace. But if I should leave and visit holy places and meet saintly people, meet devotees, I will hear from them about the Supreme Lord. And by visiting the holy places, I can render some service to the holy place and to the people who live in the holy places. And by such visits and services, I can become purified, and then I will become completely detached from this material world, and I'll become qualified or eligible to enter into the spiritual kingdom. Therefore, Vidura opted to go on pilgrimage. Detachment from Krishna produces material miseries, and attachment to Krishna gives rise to Ananda. Similarly, attachment to matter causes material distress, while detachment from matter or material energy gives rise to freedom from distress and anxiety. Therefore, the devotees always opt for detachment from the material world because they understand that detachment from the material creates happiness, creates joy, creates freedom, and attachment to matter creates pain. Just as Devahuti spoke to his son, Kapila Muni, Sangoya samsite hetur, asasu vihito diyaha. That association for sense gratification is certainly the path of bondage. But the same association, when it is done with a saintly person, it leads to the path of liberation, even if it is performed without knowledge. Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Shastra Haya, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has said that by associating with devotees, by associating with sadhus, the path of liberation is open. And this is a tested fact. It is an experimented fact that no one can become a devotee of the Lord without gaining the association of other devotees or established devotees. Before Srila Prabhupada went to New York in 1965, there were no Vaishnavas in New York. There were no Vaishnavas in America. There were no Vaishnavas in England. There were no Vaishnavas in Europe. Of course, there were Vaishnavas in India. But that single trip Srila Prabhupada made in 1965 to New York, that has created a worldwide Sangha of Vaishnavas. 50 years down the line, that single Vaishnava, single person, has created many millions Vaishnavas. So therefore, association is very important. And Vidura understood this principle, that if I remain in the palace with this Duryodhana and co, manipulating things the way they want, maneuvering situations the way they want, I will perish with them. But if I leave home and visit holy places, associate with sadhus, hear from them, serve them, I will give up this attachment to this world, and that will make me eligible to enter the spiritual sky. That will make him eligible to render service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, Vidura left home. It is said that association with these devotees or with the Lord will always bear results. Even if those associating do not take advantage, still, just by proximity, there is benefit. Even just to have a glimpse of a devotee, to have a sight of a devotee, what to speak of hearing a devotee or rendering service to a devotee, has eternal benefit. So, when Lord Krishna was on the planet, he met all kinds of living entities. Some treated him as an enemy. Some treated him as an object of sense gratification. Some treated him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Kamsa, Shishupal, Dandavakra, and many demons, they are associated with Krishna as their enemy. But nevertheless, when one associates with the devotees or with Krishna, there is always a benefit. Whether we associate positively or negatively, there is always a benefit, because the devotee association, the Krishna's association, is very, very wonderful. So all these demons, even though they saw Krishna as their enemy and they planned how to kill him, they all became liberated at the end of it all. Just like Jagai and Madai, they also associated with Lord Nityananda in a very vile way. They actually attacked Lord Nityananda. They broke his head. They saw Lord Nityananda as a disturbance to their sense gratification. But even that moment of violence, they received the mercy of Lord Nityananda. That moment of interaction with Lord Nityananda, even though they were very violent, they received the mercy of Lord Nityananda. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came on the scene very angry that his principal associate, Sri Nityananda Prabhu, was wounded by these dacoits. And so he wanted to kill them instantly. But Lord Nityananda pleaded on their behalf. And they gained the mercy of Lord Nityananda, and they became great Vaishnavas and joined Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan party. So association with devotees, association with Krishna, association with the process of bhakti is a great boon for the living entity. So therefore, Vidura understood the principle that instead of him staying in the palace and, getting involved in all these intrigues and maneuverings, better he just left home and went from holy place to holy place. meeting with saintly people, hearing about Krishna Katha, having darshan of the deities in those holy places, taking a holy bath in all the holy lakes, and touching the dust in the holy places. And by such activity, Vidura understood that that was more beneficial than staying in the palace where there was constant intrigues, constant maneuvering, constant offenses by such people like Duryodhana. So in a discussion between Narada Muni and Yudhishthira Maharaj, Narada Muni gave a number of statements that a devotee should take advantage of. Narada Muni said, Asankalpa yagyat kamam, krodam karma vivarjanat. That one should make plans with determination to give up lusty desires, to give up material attachments, one should conquer anger by giving up envy. One should conquer the desire to accumulate wealth by discussing the disadvantages of accumulating wealth. And one should give up greed by discussing the truth of the fear that is caused by greed. Furthermore, Narada Muni said, Dambam Mahat Upasaya Yoganat Tarayan Maunina. He said, by discussing spiritual topics, one can conquer over lamentation and illusion. By serving great devotees, one can become prideless. By keeping silent, one can avoid obstacles on the path of yoga. And simply by stopping sense gratification, one can conquer envy. Furthermore, he said, Kripaya bhutajam dukam daivam yajaye samadhina. That by good behavior and freedom from envy, one should counteract sufferings due to other living entities by meditation in trance, and one should counteract sufferings due to providence. And by practicing Hatha Yoga and Pranayama, one can conquer sufferings due to the body and the mind. And similarly, by developing the mode of goodness, one can conquer sleep. Then he concludes by saying one must conquer the modes of passion and ignorance by developing the mode of goodness. And then one must become detached from the mode of goodness by promoting oneself to the platform of Suddha Sattva, or pure goodness, transcendental goodness. All this can automatically be done if one engages in devotional service of the Lord. So from these statements, we can see the reason why Vidura left home. Vidura left home because he wanted to develop some spiritual qualities. He wanted to become elevated spiritually. And he realized that by staying in the palace with people like Duryodhana and his brothers, with people like Sakuni, with people like KRSNA, he would not make the necessary advancement spiritually. So therefore, he left home under the pretext of the insult that he received from Duryodhana. But actually, he took advantage of the difficulty that Duryodhana was presenting to him in order to take to the spiritual path. So the spiritual energy of the Lord works in two dimensions. It works externally and it works internally. Sometimes it may come in a form of difficulty. It may come in a form of insults. It may come in a form of even physical attack, like the case of Duryodhana threatening the life of Vidura. But this is simply a manifestation of the mercy of the Lord externally. But internally, Vidura was thinking, this is an opportunity for me to become more and more involved in the service of Krishna. This is the opportunity for me to become detached from these political games. This is the opportunity for me to take shelter of Krishna, take shelter of the holy places, take shelter of the devotees, and take shelter of Krishna Katha. So in this way, he connected with the inner manifestation of the mercy of the Lord. It is said, Krishna Kripa, Sadhu Sangha Krishna Kripa, Bhakti Swabhava. Sadhu Sangha Krishna Kripa, Bhakti Swabhava. By the mercy of devotees, one can gain the mercy of Krishna. And when one gains the mercy of Krishna, Bhakti Devi, the personification of Bhakti, becomes inclined towards such a devotee. So we need the mercy of Krishna, we need the mercy of the Vaishnavas, we need the mercy of Bhakti Devi in order to progress on the path of Bhakti. And so the internal potency of the Lord is not different from Bhakti Devi. The internal potency of the Lord is Srimati Radharani, Devi Krishna Mayi Prokta Radhika Paradevata, Sarva Lakshmi Mayi Sarvam Kanti Samohini Para. The internal potency of Krishna is Srimati Radharani. And it is Srimati Radharani that expands into the gopis. And Bhakti Devi is one of them. So Vidura was brilliant enough, he was sharp enough to see how the energy of the Lord, the internal energy of the Lord was playing. And so he took advantage and he became very advanced in his travels. He became very advanced in the detachment. He became very advanced in his spiritual life. And then he thought of his brother, Dhritarashtra. And so he came back home only to deliver him from the clutches of material existence. Actually, it's mentioned there was no need for Vidura to return home, to return to the palace, because it was that very palace that he was thrown out. So what is the use of going back to that palace? But because he wanted to deliver his senior brother, Dhritarashtra, so he returned to Hastinapur and he spoke to Dhritarashtra in such a strong language that immediately dissipated all his plans for enjoyment. Dhritarashtra was still thinking he's the king. After all, Yudhishthira Maharaj and the Pandavas were offering him obeisances because he's their uncle. So they were treating him with all awe and reverence, and he was enjoying that. And therefore, he wasn't thinking about detachment, renunciation. But when Vidura came from his trip, many years of touring holy places, meeting different people, he even met with Maitreya Muni. He met Maitreya Muni in Haridwar and spent a lot of time with Maitreya Muni, and he heard the message of Krishna and heard Srimad Bhagavatam from Maitreya Muni. He became very strong in his spiritual understanding, And from there, he went to Hastinapur, and then he delivered Dhritarashtra and his wife from the clutches of Maya. And actually, not only him, he also delivered the Pandavas. Because when Dhritarashtra and Gandhari left home, that also inspired renunciation in the heart of Yudhishthira Maharaj and the Pandavas. And so they all followed suit. Dhritarashtra and his wife Gandhari did not tell anybody where they were going. They just silently left the palace with Vidura, and they were on their way to the Himalayas in order to leave their bodies. And when Yudhishthira Maharaj discovered that their uncle had left home without even informing them, without giving them a clue where he was going, they also felt it was time for them to renounce the world. And so they also followed suit. So this Dhritarashtra's leaving home, based on the insult that he got from Duryodhana, was actually an arrangement by the internal potency of the Lord to get him out of the palace, take him around to meet many devotees, associate with many advanced souls, become very fixed in his determination, then comes back home and deliver everyone from the palace. So that is the whole arrangement of the spiritual energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so Vidura just followed that energy of the Lord, and now he's back home to deliver everybody from the palace. So Prabhupada also mentioned in the purport that this preparatory stage is called Vanaprastha Ashram, or retired life of traveling and visiting holy places on the surface of the earth. So it is said that Brahmanas can take sannyas, Kshatriyas can take Vanaprastha, and Vaishyas can become brahmacharis. But Sudras, they don't belong to any ashram. So Vaishyas, Kshatriyas, and Brahmanas, they go to Gurukula. But for a Vaishya, when he completes his Gurukula study, he does not go beyond that. But for a Kshatriya at the end of his life should take to Vanaprastha. So we see that Vidura, Dhritarashtra, Gandhari, Yudhishthira Maharaj, Bhima, Arjuna, Sahadev, Nakul, they all took Vanaprastha. Then those who are Brahmanas, they are allowed to take the sannyas ashram. But here it is mentioned that the Vanaprastha ashram is a preparatory stage or a retired life. Is a preparatory stage for sannyas. So one becomes detached from the environment, detached from home, detached from society, and then one begins to get more and more involved in devotional service, more and more involved in the spiritual energy, and then eventually one takes sannyas. Sannyas means becoming dead to the material world. So in this way, Vanaprastha is recommended that at least for the Kshatriya, he must rise up to the platform of Vanaprastha. Of course, our mission, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission, is not emphasizing so much on these spiritual destinations or spiritual classes, the important thing is to remain a devotee of the Lord from the very moment we come in touch with Krishna till we leave this material world. And the important thing to do is to always be in touch with the names of Krishna, chant the holy names of Krishna. And if one is able to remember Krishna's name at the end of one's life, one is considered a success. So the success for us in Kali Yuga is that we are able to remember Krishna's names, we are able to remember Krishna's pastimes, we are able to remember Krishna's form at the time of leaving the body. And if one is able to do that, then one has achieved the goal of life. But in the time of Dhritarashtra, in the time of Yudhishthira Maharaj, which was like Dwarapa Yuga, one has to leave home and take to the Vanaprastha ashram before he meets his death. Otherwise, one was considered a failure in life. So therefore, we see all the Pandavas, including the Kauravas, that were still alive after the Battle of Kurukshetra. They all adopted the lifestyle of the Vanaprastha. But in Kali Yuga, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, being very kind to us, has given us the holy name, and he has distributed the holy name to everyone, and that if you just chant the holy name seriously and remember Krishna's name at the end of our life, then we can also achieve the same result that was achieved by Vidura, by the Kauravas, the Dhritarashtra, by the Pandavas, and so on. So that is the important point here that we have to learn from, because Vidura had to travel to many places. He had to leave home and travel to many holy places in order to become fixed in Krishna consciousness. We may not have the same opportunity like Vidura, and how many holy places are nearby us? And now with this world situation, COVID situation, one cannot even travel. That means we are locked down in one particular place. And so our only means of perfection is to chant the holy names of Krishna very attentively, very seriously, and then we can create the consciousness, we can develop the consciousness of Vidura, and at the end of this life, we can also go back home, back to Godhead. So if there are any comments or questions, they are welcome. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. That's of course, that is not surprising. The class is so beautiful. We have His Holiness Bhaktidra Damodara Maharaj here. Hare Krishna Maharaj. If you have anything to say, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, you are welcome.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
No, I think that's can go on.
Okay. So any question from anybody? Prabhu, your class is so beautiful. Okay, Ganga Prasad has his
Yeah.
yes.
Hare Krishna.
Please unmute and then go ahead, Prabhuji.
Obeisances at your lotus feet. All glories
Hare
to Guru
Krishna,
and
all glories to
Gauranga.
you.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Jai.
I am fortunate to behold your darshan again.
Hare
Today.
Krishna. I am fortunate to hear your voice. Just
And,
hearing your voice is enough for me.
I'm also mortified by the content of the lecture. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
I have a curiosity to understand from the class. Vidura came back to salvage the Dhritarashtra. And somewhere in the second canto, he mentioned that when Vidura left home, he encountered Uddhava.
Yeah.
And Uddhava was now mentioning to him that Lord Krishna, no, first thing is, Vidura, when he left home, would have gone to see Krishna, but he didn't go. Rather, he felt he was not pure enough to go and meet Krishna. He has to go and purify himself.
Exactly.
And then when he met Uddhava, Uddhava said that Lord Krishna remembered him when he was living. But the content of that remembrance is what I'm curious to know. How did Krishna remember him? And I'm thinking curiously, is there any instruction given to Uddhava or Maitreya for Vidura that is connected with coming back to save Dhritarashtra?
Thank you. This is a very deep question, and you need deep consciousness to answer such a deep question. Fortunately, we have Bhakti Damodara Maharaj here. Yeah, let me say something, then Maharaj can also add. Yes, it is true that when Vidura left home, he could have gone to Dwaraka to see Krishna directly, but he considered himself impure, unqualified, because of his involvement in politics, his interaction with people like Duryodhana, Dhritarashtra, and so on. He felt he was not pure enough to meet the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he decided that first, let me purify myself by visiting holy places, by interacting with great devotees, by taking the dust from the holy places, I'll become purified. Then I will go and see Lord Krishna. But in the course of his travel, Krishna disappeared. And it is said that 3 people were there when Krishna disappeared. Daruka, Maitreya, and Uddhava. Daruka was sent back to Dwaraka to inform the residents of Dwaraka that they should quit Dwaraka within a week because it was going to get flooded. So actually Daruka did not see how the Lord left, because there were 3 of them who were, when Krishna decided to leave, the 3 of them were there, but Krishna sent Daruka back to Dwaraka to inform them that they should leave the place immediately, because within a week, the whole of Dwaraka will be flooded. But Maitreya and Uddhava, they were with the Lord till the very end of his Leela in this world. And obviously, Vidura is a very dear devotee. Vidura is classified as Sanatana Goswami in his Brihad Bhagavatamrita classifies the devotees, called them Parishadas, Hari Parishadas. And there Vidura is classified under the Prema Rupa Parishadas, those who are very dear to Krishna, very close to Krishna. So because Vidura is dear to Krishna, Krishna remembered him. See, when one becomes dear to Krishna, it's not that he only remembers Krishna, but Krishna also remembers the devotee. So because Vidura is such an exalted devotee, even though he sees himself unqualified to meet Lord Krishna, but in the books of Krishna, in the good books of Krishna, Vidura is an elevated devotee. Therefore, even when he had a desire not to go and see Krishna, Krishna had received the message, because Krishna is Paramatma. So he understood, this my devotee, he is supposed to come and see me, but he's out of his humility, he's feeling unqualified to come to me. So therefore, he left a message with Uddhava and Maitreya, that message should be given to Vidura. So Vidura met Uddhava in Vrindavan. He met him in Vrindavan. And Uddhava told Vidura that the Lord had disappeared. In fact, Vidura got to know about the disappearance of the Yadus, the disappearance of Balaram, and the disappearance of Krishna. He heard it from the mouth of Uddhava. And then when Vidura heard this, he began to cry like a child. He was shedding tears like anything because he had a desire to see the Lord, but now the Lord was gone. Anyway, Uddhava told him, "No, Krishna, while leaving the planet, remembered you." And so he had left a message with Maitreya. So you go and hear from Maitreya. And Vidura said, "But you were also there. So why don't you give me the message? You were there. You heard the Lord delivering the message. So why don't you impart that message onto me?" And Vidura said, Uddhava said, "So long as there is a senior personality nearby, so long as Maitreya Muni, a very advanced soul, is nearby, I cannot instruct you. I cannot." So, and that is mentioned as, what is it? When we instruct a senior person who is superior to us, it is considered a breach of etiquette.
Mariada.
Maryada, Vyati karma. Maryada Vyati karma. That when we breach the etiquette of Vaishnava relationship, it is not good. So therefore, Uddhava declined that so long as Maitreya Muni is just in Haridwar and Vrindavan, there is not much of a distance. Vidura should go to Haridwar to meet Maitreya for the message. Now that message, it is not spoken, but we can understand that Krishna must have talked about devotional service and the perfection of devotional service, and probably taking the Tarastra and everybody from the palace back home. But that message, I have not come across the exact message that Krishna gave to Maitreya to be told to Vidura. But we can infer that what is the message between the Lord and his devotees is devotional service. So therefore, Vidura's message, the message Vidura received from Maitreya is about devotional service and how he could be of assistance to others. Maharaj is here. He can give us some more information on this. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Oh, yeah, you have said it. You have said it. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prabhu. So how are you doing in Ota?
I'm only surviving by your mercy.
Krishna's mercy. Hare Krishna. Happy to see you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, you said some things that do not seem quite clear to me. And I would want you to help me clarify them. One is, you said in the course of your lecture that Vidura wanted to go to places of pilgrimages to purify himself.
Yeah.
And again, you also indicated that he left home due to the insults coming from Duryodhana. So my question is, did Vidura leave home because he wanted to visit places of pilgrimages to re-spiritualize himself, or he left home due to the insults? And I am thinking that Vidura did not leave home because he wanted to visit places of pilgrimages, but he left home because of the insults coming from Duryodhana. But he was, in a material sense, we would say, very smart enough to use that insult as an impetus to seek spirituality. I would like you to throw more light on that. Which one led to what?
Yeah, thank you very much, Prabhu. That's what Prabhupada actually explains, that Vidura's leaving home was under the direct inspiration of the internal potency of the Lord. And that internal potency of the Lord manifested in two ways. One way is the external, and one way is internal. The external aspect was that Duryodhana insulted him. That was the external manifestation of the internal potency of the Lord. Duryodhana insulted him. Now, from the outside, it is the insult of Duryodhana that made him to leave home. But internally, the internal energy was inspiring him to leave home and take to the process of devotional service. That is the actual thing. But the manifestation of the insults or the behavior of Duryodhana toward Vidura is just an impetus for him to leave home. But the main reason for leaving home is not the insults. The main reason for leaving home is that Krishna wanted him to leave home and then tour holy places, give his association to others, and also gain association from others, and eventually come back and liberate the entire Kuru family, Pandava family, by his spiritual activities. So Prabhupada explains that the internal potency of the Lord acted externally and also acted internally. Externally, it manifested in the form of the insults from Duryodhana, and internally, it gave the understanding to Vidura that there is nothing to hang out here for. Just get out and take shelter of the holy places, take shelter of devotees, take shelter of bhakti, process of bhakti. And so Prabhupada said it acted externally and also acted internally. But the real reason for Vidura leaving home is to visit the holy places, to meet with saintly people, and then come back at the end and then liberate his family members. So that is my understanding. Maybe Maharaj can also throw more light if it is not very clear.
Well, Prabhuji, Shukadev, I'll be back with you in a minute, but the answer you gave is very satisfactory to me. And I mean, with my little head and a little brain, it makes a lot of sense to me. I understand it. But that also means that, you see, we have many people that speak.
Yeah.
And because we hear different people speak, we sometimes hear like seemingly opposing conclusions of the scriptures. So sometimes it gets one confused. What do I do? Because some devotees would say that if Krishna induces one to do something, if Krishna wants something to happen, one should wholly accept it.
Okay.
But here we see that even though Krishna wanted Vidura to go to places of pilgrimages, but externally he let that come through the insults of Duryodhana.
Yes.
And if Vidura had just said that, okay, this is Krishna's arrangement, so I'll just stay here, then he wouldn't have left. But
Yeah.
he reacted. He reacted to the insults coming from Duryodhana and felt that this is not an ideal place for me to live at the moment. So let me just leave.
Yeah.
And so my question is, the same way I remember in 91 when we held our 10th year
Anniversary. Yeah.
Joe Yanka was the host, right?
Yeah.
And when he was presenting Gurudev, he presented him as, he's a Swamiji. He has no anger in him. So that's how I understood a Swamiji to be, no anger. And then about 4 or 5 years later, I saw Bhaktivinoda Maharaj so much angry. And I was thinking to myself, what happened? So here we see that Vidura reacted to the insults, but he reacted to it positively. So my question is, don't you think from the scriptural point of view that being in this human body, we obviously going to react as human beings, but the way we react is where the problem or the blessing comes from?
Yes.
I would like you to throw more light on that, please.
Maybe let Maharaj also say something. Let's hear from Maharaj.
Well, I will. My understanding is that what the things which we do is one thing, but the end result, that is the most important thing. What is the end result of what we do? If the end result is not wonderful, there is something wrong from. Even if you look auspicious, Gita Krishna said that could look very nice in the beginning, but the end is poison, and that is ignorant.
Yeah.
But what looks like a poison in the beginning, but the end is nectar, that is goodness. So we should look at the end result. What is the end result of anything that we do? What is the end result? Otherwise, you will judge everything wrong and make a lot of mistakes. Look at Dhruva Maharaj. He has the material desire, but what's the result of the end result with that material desire? You can say, I know how you come to this movement. It was because you're very poor. That's why you joined the Krishna movement. And you really see what you almost died. They took you to all hospitals everywhere in the world. You didn't survive. That's why you came to Krishna. I know how you came to Krishna consciousness. That's an offense. You'll be offending Dhruva Maharaj. You'll be offending the Kumaras. You'll be offending. So many devotees who came to this movement on Kardamamundi will be offending all these devotees, the exalted pure devotees. If you are going to look at their background like this, so let us look at the end result. What is the end result? We look at the Vidura. What is the end result? You met with auspiciousness. So whatever happened in the beginning, that is not important. And materially, it is said that a thing which we do is that thing that is going to kill us. A person who is driving car, you're going to die in a car accident. Right? A drunkard is going to die by drinking. He collapse in the drink. So the thing which we do, that is how we are going to end our life like that. So we should look at the end result. This is my little understanding about.
Thank you, Hare.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Shri Shukadev, please, you may unmute. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Fu. Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. Very, very joyful. I have a question that is kind of like also intertwined in another question. But in the course of the lecture, you did make mention during the last part, you said that the message that Lord Krishna had for Vidura, you've not come across any part where that particular message was relayed, you know, and then you say maybe the message was Bhakti Yoga, Bhakti, you know. But my question is, if the question that the Lord had from Vidura was not maybe it was given to him, but it was not in the discourse of the Srimad Bhagavatam or stuff like that Maitreya Muni was explaining to Vidura. Now, how do we understand what that special instruction was that the Lord, had for Vidura? And is it that we need to study the Srimad Bhagavatam extensively, or because there are some messages that you give to somebody, but it is coded in different words. So is it that we need to study the Srimad Bhagavatam extensively and deeply to be able to unravel the mystery of the message that Sri Krishna gave to, was passing to Maitreya Muni to give to Vidura, or it is a different thing altogether? This is the question, Maharaj.
Thank you for your difficult question. We shall try. Yeah, the message that was meant for Vidura was heard both by Uddhava and Maitreya. Uddhava knew what message Krishna had left for Vidura, and Maitreya knew because they were there. But as I said, I've not come across the exact message. That does not mean that it is not there. Actually, there are some of the acharyas, they comment on these issues. And some of the acharyas, they have the ability to actually understand the message. So if one studies all the acharyas' books, he might come across that specific instruction somewhere. I have not studied all the acharyas' books, and therefore I've not come across it yet. But knowing that Vidura was a dear devotee of Krishna, that Krishna was thinking of him at the time of departure, we can simply understand that love between Krishna and Vidura is based on devotional service. So what is more confidential, what is more important than a message of devotional service? Whatever the information may be, but it will be related to Vidura's devotional service, Vidura's relationship with the Lord, Vidura's going back home, back to Godhead. And we know that Vidura too was Yamaraj. Vidura was Yamaraj. And because he was cursed by the sage, he had to be born as a Sudra. And in his absence, Ariyama became the controller of the Yamaraj Loka. So Yamaraj is a special officer of Krishna. He is a representative of Krishna. He is in charge of all the sinful people in the universe. So the message that Krishna left behind will have something to do with devotional service, with his service, and so on. But since I've not come across the message as it is, that's what I'm saying, that it must be connected to devotional service, must be connected to Vidura service. But we can do a further studies, further research to find out what is the exact message that Krishna gave to Vidura. But for me, I think based on the intimacy, based on the loving relationship between Krishna and Vidura, Krishna was thinking of him as his dear devotee. And so as a dear devotee, what is the message? In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna, I'm revealing this confidential knowledge of devotional service to you because you're my dear friend, because you're my dear devotee. So, same way, some confidential knowledge about devotional service may be revealed to Vidura through the agency of Maitreya. And so Maitreya became the guru of Vidura, and Maitreya imparted the message or lesson or whatever to Vidura. So it's an area of research. We can research in all the Acharyas' books to find out whether there's any specific comment on this issue and whether it is actually mentioned. Because some Acharyas, they're able to go into the past and they're able to go into the future, and they can actually come out with the exact words. So I cannot say I've read all the Acharyas' tikas, Acharyas' commentaries, and therefore I've not come across it.
Okay, Hare Krishna, thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
We are fortunate to have His Grace Srimad Mahaprabhu here, and he indicated in the chat room that the message Maitreya related to Vidura was the Ayila Gita, which is the same. Yes, Ayila Gita, and it seems it's kind of mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam.
Yeah, 11th canto is there.
Yeah. Ayala Gita, which is same as what was given to Uddhava.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you.
Quite interesting.
Thank you for the comment.
Yeah. And Shukadev, thank you for asking such deeper question.
Thank you, Prabhu.
So anyone else with any question? Anadi Nidanam, please. Anadi Nidanam, Prabhu, unmute.
Okay, yeah, Arvisa Maharaj, thank you very much for your wonderful. My question is, Vidura leave the palace because of Ninzod, let me take it that way. As a devotee, sometimes we left home to go to the temple just because of unfavorable conditions at home. But getting to the temple, it became worse, just like as Vidura went to pilgrimage. So in that situation, what do we do? It's just like from frying pan to fire. Because we are thinking that maybe temple will have been a comfortable zone whereby we can practice devotional service. But getting there also, it became worse. So in this situation, what do we do as a neophyte? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for your question. I think I've heard Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj answer this type of question. He said, first, we must realize that the material world is a crazy place. And the temple, because it's located in the material world, and we are inviting all kinds of people to join in order to get rectified, to have the material situation rectified. Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj compared the temple to a hospital. So it says, when you go to a hospital, you should not expect to find only healthy people in the hospital. A hospital is a place for the sick. So when you enter the hospital, you should be ready to see all kinds of sick people. Some on the ground, some cannot walk, some with tubes in their noses. And some are just recovering, they're eating, they're walking, they're getting discharged. And some are even dead. They're rolling them on the trolley to the mortuary. So once you get to the hospital, you come across different kind of scenes. But you should be focused on why you have gone to the hospital. If you say because there are horrible sicknesses in the hospital, because there are horrible people with different types of sicknesses at the entrance of the hospital or in the OPD or in the wards, therefore you cannot go for treatment, then you are putting yourself in a very tight corner. So the first premise is that you should understand that the temple is a place, as a spiritual hospital where everybody is bringing his disease to be cured. And so you should not expect that everybody will be cured at once. We have different degrees of the diseases, and we have different degrees of the curage. So therefore, if you have this understanding, whatever happens in the temple environment, we will say, okay, here is another sick person, and that is another sick person. I'm also one of them. We have different degrees of the sickness. Let me face my sickness and get cured. That is what I heard from Bhakti Tita Maharaj when such a question, a similar question was asked. He said we should see the temple as a spiritual hospital for curing all kinds of material consciousness. And so we are all going there to be cured. And we have different degrees of the sickness. So if you see somebody more sick than you, you don't give up your treatment and go away. You should say, oh, I thought I was very sick, but this one is even worse than my case. But let me pay attention, let me get cured, and let me get out of the material world. We shouldn't look at somebody else's disease and say, because of that person's disease, I won't stay in the hospital anymore. I won't take the treatment from the doctor. I won't take the medicine again. If you take that stance, then it is you who will lose. So that is the answer I heard from Bhakti Tita Maharaj when a similar question was asked.
Okay, thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you. Thank you so much. Anyone else with anything to say, to share? See, Prabhuji, oftentimes things that are so common are also very, very difficult to understand.
Mm.
In this crazy world, about 95% of songs, music we listen to, they all talk about love.
Mm.
Yet we don't really understand what love is.
No.
So as spiritual seekers, we are always told that we do not have to become attached to matter. We do not have to become attached to material things. And you did say that in your lecture, that attachment to material things bring about distress.
Mm.
So my question is, what do we mean when we say somebody is attached to material things? Because to me, material things means anything in creation, because they all matter.
Yeah.
And does that mean that one should not be attached to his house, his car, his body, his relatives? So what does it mean when we telling spiritual seekers or people in general that, hey, my dear, you don't have to become attached to matter. You don't have to become attached to material things. What does that mean, please?
Yes, that Rupa Goswami has given us the definition. There is Falgu Vairagya and there is Yukta Vairagya. Yukta Vairagya is our principle. Whatever we have, it should be engaged in Krishna's service. Whatever that we come in touch with should be utilized in Krishna's service. That is Yukta Vairagya. We do not reject anything. We accept everything in the service of Krishna. That is detachment. But when we accept things for our own pleasure, then that is what is described as attachment. But if we accept things, be it houses, be it cars, be it money, be it whatever, if we simply link those things to devotional service, that is described as Yukta Vairagya. One is not considered attached if he utilizes whatever he has in Krishna's service. But when it is not utilized for Krishna's service, and obviously it is utilized for our own senses, and that is where attachment begins, and that is where the misery begins. If we are using everything for Krishna's service, if we had to leave it, say at the time of death, there is no lamentation because we have utilized everything in Krishna's service very nicely. We actually score many more devotional credits by utilizing everything in Krishna's service. Utilize your body in Krishna's service, utilize your family in Krishna's service, utilize your resources, your property in Krishna's service. So you are earning a lot of credit that at the time of death, you'll be so happy that you engage everything you had in Krishna's service. But if one does not do that, just like the non-devotees, the karmis, they have no idea how to employ things in Krishna's service. Everything is centered around them, I and mine. And so at the time of death, they are lamenting that they have to give up these things. And so there is pain. But for a devotee, at the time of death, he is very happy that he has used his life in Krishna's service. And now, by Krishna's mercy, he is going to join Krishna's pastimes. So a devotee has no limitation. A devotee is just thinking how I'm going to join Krishna in his lila, because he has utilized everything in Krishna's service, even if he does not attain that perfection. But Krishna would arrange for him to go into a higher level of devotional service and a higher level and a higher level, and in such a way that devotee makes progress. So the definition of attachment is when we use things for our own pleasure, that brings attachment. But if we use everything we have in connection with devotional service, then it turns into bhakti. It is no more attachment. And that is what Rupa Goswami describes as Yukta Vairagya. Nothing actually belongs to us. Even our body does not belong to us. These are all borrowed plumes. Whatever we have, we did not come with them, and we shall not go with them. So in the time being, between birth and death, we are thinking this belongs to me and that belongs to me. But actually, even our own body, our own senses, we shall abandon them at some point. We want to speak of other things that are not within the body. So, but the good thing is we can use the body, we can use our resources, we can use everything in Krishna's service, and that is the detachment that would promote one, elevate one to a higher level of consciousness in a higher realm of existence. And that is what Rupa Goswami is recommending.
Thank you so much. Beautiful definition. Okay. Sri Shika.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I'm sorry, I'm a bit about to divert a bit. My question is not actually related to this particular class, but it's mainly related to one of the class that a few days ago, His Holiness Kavichandra Swami Maharaj, he gave a lecture. Now, in that class, he was giving the narration of the Pandavas, how they were born, the conception, how they were conceived, and through the mantra that Queen Kunti got, and she was able to call different demigods, and from that she was able to conceive. But the children, although they were born, they were children of different demigods, but they were raised by a different father. Their original father, the seminal father, is not the one that raised them.
Yeah,
Now,
man raised them. Yeah.
yes, and then Maharaj said that most often it is also bona fide that the semen, the father that imputes the semen is not always the one that raised the child. Now, how do we understand this in this concept, in this particular day and age? Because I wanted to ask it there, but there was not much time for me, so I couldn't ask. But how do we understand this in this day and age? In the sense that we hear Krishna talking about, Arjuna was speaking about Varna Sanskara. Also, we see that in this day and age, there are so many situations whereby people just donate their the semen, and they get children, and the children is being raised by other people, and there is no connection. Now, this no connection with the original birth father, with the original semen father, is this also not a Varna Sankara in a sense? This is a question, Maharaj. I don't know if it's relevant, but
Well,
I
get your point. I get your point. And see, Varna Sanskara simply means irresponsible relationships. In other words, the women have no husbands, and then some loose men who cannot control the senses, they flirt with them, impregnate them, and then children are born. The men are not responsible, the women are not responsible. Sometimes you don't even know the father who impregnated a woman because she has flirted with a number of men. So he cannot even identify the man who gave her the seed. So, but in the case of the Pandavas, there were specific men, specific fathers of high quality who provided the semen. And so we cannot describe that as Varna Samskaras, because the demigods that gave the seed to Kunti and Madri, they were responsible demigods. They were elevated personalities. We reference to human beings. They're superior to us. So when they give a seed to a human being, that seed must be of a high caliber. So the Pandavas, they were fathered by different demigods, because actually Krishna had ordered that the demigods appear in this world to assist him in his pastimes. When Brahma and the Mother Earth went to see Brahma, and Brahma led the demigods to the ocean of milk to present the calamitous situation of the earth planet to Lord Vishnu, Lord Vishnu instructed Brahma that many demigods should take birth within human society to help him carry out his mission. So the Pandavas came on the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The demigods, they were simply obeying the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in order to bring the Pandavas into this world to assist Krishna's pastimes. So such arrangement cannot be compared to Varna Samskaras, because the fathers were very elevated, they were responsible, and they were actually acting in consonance with the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the case of Varna Samskaras, in most cases, the father is not known, only the mother is known. And so, of course, in our present day and age, many of these things are happening. But you see also, in olden times, a child is born by the father, but he is trained by the guru. He goes to Gurukula at the age of 5 till the age of 25. So he spends his formative years in the Gurukula. That was the order of the day. Your father, especially the boys, they had to be sent to Gurukula, and they have to live with the guru for 20 years. And when they're at the age of 25, if they can continue as brahmacharis, Naitiki brahmacharis, and become sannyasis, then they just stay in the ashram. They don't come back home. And those who want to get into household life, they take permission from the guru and they go back home and they enter into household life. So, so the training of a child is actually done by the guru because he inculcates both spiritual discipline and material discipline so that the child grows up to be a rounded person. He is materially okay and also spiritually okay. In our day and age, parents only train their children in material fields. They don't care very much about the spiritual aspect. And that is why the world is in chaos. So it is a fact that even children are to be trained by the guru, by the sadhus in the Gurukula system, where they can become responsible people. And before they come home, they're already young men, they're already grown up. So actually, in the real sense of it, it's just 5 years of training. But even at that time, the training is not very strict. It is said that till the child is above 5, you cannot chastise him. You don't chastise a child who is below 5 years. You can only chastise a child after 5 years. So when it is time for chastisement, the child is supposed to be living in a Gurukula, where he's given very strict training to become a responsible person in society. So in a Vedic days, Vedic age, actually, parents bring forth their children, especially the boys, but they were all sent to Gurukula, where they actually have the training before they come back home. I don't know whether I've attempted to answer your question.
Yes, Maharaj, thank you very much. I understand perfectly. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. Probably if you have a few more minutes, I would like to follow up with Sri Shukadev's intelligent question.
Okay.
I also had the same question when His Holiness Kavachana Maharaj was speaking. And we see that my follow-up question is, the demigods who say impregnated Kunti and Madri, the children are not named after them.
No.
The children are named after Kunti's husband, which is Pandu.
Yes.
And Pandu knows that these children are not my seminal children.
Yes.
So is it because it was a secret just between them that the rest of the world didn't know how they were impregnated, that Pandu accepted the fatherhood? Or is it simply because they donated the seed and so they have nothing to do with the children anymore? The person, actually in the purport, it was said that it is the person who takes care of the children who is considered like the legitimate father. Like we see in the story of Shakuni also. Sorry, no, not Shakuni.
KRSNA.
No, this name came and then gone. Vishwamitra's daughter, Shakuntala. Yeah, Shakuntala. Shakuntala is also named Shakuntala because she was taken care of by the birds.
Yeah.
By the Shakuntala birds.
Yeah.
So even though Shakuntala is born to Vishwamitra, but because nobody knew who brought her there, and they found the Shakuntala birds taking care of her, she was named after the Shakuntala birds.
Yeah.
But Draupadi also. Draupadi, Maharaj Drupad found her, brought her up, so she was named after Draupad, even though Draupad is not a legitimate seminal father.
Yeah.
But we see that in our modern days, the same thing happens. People donate their semen to other people, and when they become pregnant, they give birth, they are named after the caregiver. So it seems to me that somehow the world is following Vedic principles to some extent, right? That's interesting.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. Actually, I don't think it's a question per se,
As
but
a comment,
it's just
it's more like a comment.
like a comment. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, but what I can say
right.
here is that the demigods that were invoked by Kunti,
Yeah.
actually Kunti took permission from the husband
Mm.
because the husband was cursed.
Yeah.
Because he killed those sages who had turned into animals and they were mating, and he shot at them.
Mm.
So they cursed him that the day he would try to have affairs with his wife, that would be the end of his life.
Mm.
So that was a standing case, and he was aware of it. And so when he got married to these beautiful queens, Kunti Devi and Madri, he could not have affairs with them. And what did I say? The Kunti had gotten this benediction from, I think from the Rasa Muni. And so,
yes.
yeah, so he revealed it to the husband that this is what I have. And so we can utilize it. And the husband gave his permission. He said, go ahead, because this is my situation. If I try, that'll be the end of me.
Mm.
So anyway, having obtained the husband's permission, she invoked the three demigods, Yamaraj, Vayu, and Indra, to give him seed for Yudhishthira Maharaj, Bhima, and Arjun.
Good.
And then with the permission of the husband, he also gave the same mantra to Madri. And Madri invoked the Aswini Kumaras to give him the twins, Sahadev and Nakul. So because the husband is aware that his wives are invoking higher beings to give them seed with his permission. So, but other people don't know, actually. Other people don't know. It's just an issue between Pandu and his two wives.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and of course, the people who give the seed, they do not even stay to see the birth of the children. They just gave the seed and they were gone. Okay. So Pandu took over the management of the pregnancy of the wives until the delivery. So naturally, he's the father. He has taken care of the pregnant women. He has taken care of their birth. He has taken care of the children. So automatically, he is the father. And he knows the source of the seed of the children. And of course, Pandu is also not an ordinary person. Pandu is a very exalted personality. He came into this world to actually create an avenue for the Lord's pastimes. Pandu's children, Yudhishthira Maharaj, Bhima, Arjuna, Nakula, Sahadev, they all played very significant roles in the Battle of Kurukshetra. Can you imagine the battle without the Pandavas? If the Pandavas were not there, there wouldn't have been any battle. So Krishna came to eliminate the demonic forces, but he has to use the devotees to eliminate them. So therefore, it's a whole scheme. It is Krishna's plan that was fulfilled. Krishna wanted it that way. And so all the arrangement from beginning to end, Krishna's hands was inside. So, and Pandu, being a devotee, understood that these souls are coming to assist Krishna in his pastimes. So he accepted the fatherhood, gave them the names, took care of them, because he understood that these are Krishna's devotees who are coming to assist Krishna in the in the past times. Even sometimes we look at the birth of Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva, some people argue that why should the Supreme Lord, who is coming to write books, come in this way? You know, in the middle of a river, his father impregnated Satyavati, and then there he was born, and all that. But we cannot question Krishna. Krishna has his way of doing his things. He has a way he wants to use a certain situation to bring out some information, to bring out some knowledge, to teach others some lessons. So Krishna has his own way of doing things. So in the same way, Pandu was brought into the world, and then because Krishna wanted these powerful souls from the demigods to assist him in the war, assist him in eliminating all the demonic forces, so they were brought into Pandu's family, and Pandu accepted them, and then he treated them as his children because he understood that these are the devotees of Krishna and they are coming to serve Krishna. So he was just playing his role as a father.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah. This very topic to me confirms the saying that blood is thicker than water, but love is thicker than blood.
That's right.
Yes, so that's very interesting. Thank you so much. I think we will bring the class to an end today. Thank you all for your patience and being here today. Except somebody else has something else to say. I don't know if BDD Maharaj is still here.
He has left.
Anything to say? He left, yeah.
Yeah, he's left.
Yeah, okay. All right, so at this point, we're going to kindly request all the devotees to unmute, and then we chant Big Hare Krishna. Oh, Hare Chakra Prabhu, you have something to say? Oh my God. His Grace, do you have 1 minute or so to pick his question or what?
Well, if he has a question, we'll take.
Okay. Hare Krishna, Shri Hare Chakra.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Hare Chakra Prabhu.
Dandava Pranam. All glories to Gurudeva, all glories to Prabhupada, and all glories to you. Thank you. Thank you for the exotic class.
There's mercy.
My question is, sometimes it's so baffling that when some things happen that looks like not appropriate in the material sense of view, sometimes we console ourselves that, oh, what we can, because we cannot understand Krishna, what can we do? Because looking at these various stories that we are talking about, look at the way the Pandavas were giving birth to. Look at Satyavati. These are so exalted people.
Personalities, yeah.
Exalted personalities. But the way they enter the material world, I mean, if you bring to the material sense, it doesn't really make sense. It's like, and yet we try to console ourselves that because it's Krishna's plan, and yet when people also indulge in illicit sex and all these things, that one we are boldly able to come out and condemn it. So this is something so baffling. So I mean, I was going to ask this question earlier, but when you brought this Satyavati thing and you were talking about it, some sort of answered my question. But at the same time, it looks a little baffling because especially if you are preaching to someone who is not a devotee, I mean, it becomes like, I mean, very difficult to, explain yourself.
Yes, it's true.
So if you can give me some sort of like something that can be one of my put in my pocket, so that when anytime I miss out such difficult situations, then I might try to go through that hole.
Yes, thank you for the interesting question. These are interesting questions. Some questions are difficult, some questions are interesting. So this is an interesting question. You know, when we talk about spiritual etiquette or spiritual principles, such things as the birth of Vyasadeva may be frowned upon, or the issues of the birth of Pandavas may be frowned upon because it does not meet the spiritual standard that we are talking about. So it is a bit bewildering that these things are even part of our scripture. But the answer to this is that there is nothing impossible for Krishna to do. Whichever way Krishna wants the soul to enter the world, for whatever reason Krishna wants, he allows it to happen. And so great personalities like Srila Vyasadeva can be described as his birth is not a normal marriage, wedded love or wedded child. Is out of wedlock. It was born, one can say, out of the lust of Parasaramuni. Because Parasaramuni saw this beautiful girl, Satyavati, and he couldn't control himself. But then the understanding is that because Krishna wanted Parasaramuni to be the father of Vyasadeva, he instigated lust in the mind of Parasaramuni. And so when Parasaramuni saw this fisherman's daughter, Satyavati, he could not control himself. And because Srila Vyasadeva will become the father of Pandu, father of Vidura, father of Dhritarashtra. You see, the link is there. They are going to, Vyasadeva is going to become the father of the Kauravas or the Kurus. So the whole scheme is arranged. The whole network is arranged down. So that is where we always say that it is Krishna's arrangement, because if not for Krishna's arrangement, how could this happen? So such extraordinary situations, we can only say it's Krishna's arrangement. Otherwise, how did it happen? In the case of Kunti, it was clear that if he did not receive those mantras from Durvasa Muni, it would have been impossible for him to become the mother of the Pandavas. So all these arrangements were put in place by Krishna because the Pandavas will have to play a crucial role in the pastimes of Krishna. Arjuna received the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna was the instrument for the battle of Kurukshetra and so many other things. When Krishna left the planet, Arjuna was the person who evacuated the queens of Dwaraka to Hastinapur. So Arjuna played such a crucial role in the pastimes of the Lord, and therefore we have to accept that his birth was arranged by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we have to differentiate between things that are directly connected to the Supreme Lord and things that are not connected to the Supreme Lord. In other words, things that are meant to serve the Supreme Lord and things that are meant to serve the interests of the conditioned soul. So those activities that are meant to serve the interests of the conditioned soul are condemned or looked down or frowned upon. But those activities that are sanctioned by the Lord, that are meant to give the Lord some pleasure, we accept it as Krishna's arrangement. So the birth of the Pandavas, the birth of Vyasadeva, and some other personalities who also took such mysterious birth, strange birth, probably even unaccepted birth, but once they are meant to serve Krishna, they are meant to enhance the Lord's pastimes, we have to accept that Krishna's hand was inside that arrangement. But on the other side, when people do these same things, which are not connected to Krishna, then it is frowned upon as sinful or whatever way we describe it. So the dividing line is that activities that are sanctioned by the Lord, activities that are meant to enhance the pastimes of the Lord, are considered divine. And activities that are enacted for the pleasure of the conditioned souls are considered material. So in this way, even though both activities may look the same, they may look the same, but there is a gulf of difference. Just like the case of the gopis. It is said that the gopis, they approached Krishna with lust. And one may say that what is the difference between the gopis lusting after Krishna and any young boy lusting after a young girl? But the Acharyas say there is a gulf of difference, because the gopis, they are approaching Krishna, and Krishna is Pavitram Uttamam. Pavitra, he is supremely pure. So even if one approaches Krishna with some material situation, material consciousness, material desire, because of the purity of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all the material contaminations are burnt to ashes. But if one is engaged in material activities which are not connected to Krishna, one becomes entangled by his own activities. So the dividing line is what is meant for Krishna's pleasure, which is part of Krishna's plan, and that which is not part of Krishna's plan, that is meant for the pleasure of the conditioned soul. That is the dividing line, to my understanding.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, I'm sorry to request of you. We have two hands up. I thought the class was over. Your class, I would term it as Chintamani.
No.
It's a touchstone. So we have Varaha Prabhu, hands up, and Jana Chakshu. So we'll go to Varaha Prabhu. Please unmute. Shri Varaha Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Varaha Prabhu.
Thank you very much for the nice lecture. But this question of Harishakra Prabhu makes me think that it looks like we are not looking at the whole picture.
Okay.
Jesus Christ is glorified for being for his immaculate conception.
Okay.
And I use the Pandavas as an example of immaculate conception in the Vedas.
Right.
That only Jesus Christ is immaculate concept of immaculate conception. Now, some people might say Holy Spirit, but other scriptures actually said that she was impregnated by Saint Michael, the Archangel Michael.
Yeah.
That he was responsible for that pregnancy. So, I mean, in the Vedic concept, we have the demigods like the archangels, interfering with these conceptions. So I don't think there's something to be considered that it is out of the way, because Jesus Christ, for instance, in the Western scripture, is known to have been born by Immaculate Conception. And the case of ceremony, anyway, I would also not want to accept that as lusty desire, because one would expect that the great sages, they actually are in tune with God's desire and God's plan.
Yeah, that's true.
So because they know that he has to bring the Vyasadeva into this world, and he did not have any physical contact with her. So that is not anything lusty. It is the desire of the Lord that has to be fulfilled. And this is an incarnation of the Lord. So it would be wrong to say that Vyasadeva was born out of lusty desire. Incarnation of God cannot come from lusty desire. So it was actually the Lord interacting with his pure devotee, Parasaramuni, who understood the plan of the Lord. And he acted as an instrument to let the Lord appear in that way, which was also an immaculate conception, because he was conceived and given back to on the same day, very same day. That is
same time, yes. Yeah.
That is not human type of giving back to children. So it is completely transcendental and out of this world. So it is also another immaculate conception of a higher order, even higher than that of Jesus. But Jesus stayed 9 months in the womb. Yesterday was the same day. So anyway, that's just some few comments that I think I should add to. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very nice comments. Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you. So we go to Jana Chakshu Prabhu. Please unmute.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I think I just wanted to also bring it in because many a times we say it's Krishna's will. So if Krishna wants to bring Vyasadeva to this world, can Krishna allow him to appear in a very decent way? Why does he have to let it go to that kind of, the so-called indecent act? That will bring a personality who is going to pen down the scripture that has been there since time immemorial. So yes, we can say it's Krishna's will, but another side that we need to focus on, the Gita says, we are who we are not because of our birth, because of our deeds. So all these great sages, all these wonderful souls will become very prominent in the history of the world, even though their conception was something like an indecent act. Then it means that whatever situation that we find ourselves, we can become something by our deeds. And that's also to say that those of us that are leaders, we should be very, very careful not to condemn situation anyhow, because some of these situations, if not because the story of the Pandavas and then the Parasamuni and whatever was written in the scripture, anybody at all could say that it was a true innocent act. But because this information were later written in the scripture, that's why now we are saying it's Krishna's own arrangement. And we shouldn't forget that Krishna's pastime is always going on. So it means, even though we are not writing any scripture now, there are some incidents, some situations in life that we should be very careful not to just criticize it. Because I believe that during the time of Parasamuni and that of the Vyasadeva, people at that time will be criticizing that this is a very bad act. Why should you do this? But later it was written in the scripture. That's why now we read it and understand, oh, it was the arrangement of Krishna. So we have to be careful how we criticize situations, because we might not know that maybe Krishna has some hand in it. Even though it might look like an indecent situation, maybe Krishna has some hand in it, but because it is not going to be written in the scripture, we must sit back and they just condemn the act. So that's the point I want to bring in. That looking at the fact that yes, Krishna's will, but let's look at the other side. That even now as we are speaking, maybe some souls are coming through some of these indecent situations and Krishna has his own hand in it, but because it's not going to be written down as a scripture, that's why we might even criticize. We have to be very, very careful when we are dealing with situations like this.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, I think Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj mentioned something like this in his Warrior 2, Transforming Loss into Love.
Okay.
Yeah, he mentioned that sometimes certain souls want to come through specific beings. I think he was talking about sometimes we even see saintly people having affairs with some women in order to produce a child. So he's explaining that sometimes certain souls who want to come into the material world for a specific function, they have to come through a certain arrangement. And so they push that soul into some relationship to facilitate their birth. So Guru Maharaj mentioned that these situations are there. And one has to be very circumspect. One has to be very careful when you deal with these situations, because it's not a common occurrence. It is not something that happens all the time, but it does happen that sometimes a great soul has to come into the material world, and the only way he has to come through the material world is by getting a body, and that body has to be conceived by a woman. And for the body to be conceived, some man must provide a seed. And so a particular person is identified by the soul coming into the world to become the father, to become the mother. And so like this, such things happen. So it's a fact that we have to be very careful on some of these issues, and so that we don't create unnecessary offenses or dangerous situations for ourselves. I agree, because I read that Gurudev was also mentioning that in his Warrior 2. So I think we should come to an end today.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much. I think this time is the final end to the class today. So please, thank you all very much. We're going to ask you all to unmute, and then we chant Hare Krishna to express our appreciation and love for His Grace Srivas VANACARI. Jai, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare,
Hare Rama,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Rama
Rama,
Hare
Hare.
Jai, all glories to His grace
Prabhupada
Srivas
ki
VANACARI ki Jai.
Prabhupada ki
All
jai.
glories to the assembled devotees. Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Jai.
Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
So